Students ignore directions for 5 reasons. In today's video, we're going to go over those 5 reasons, and then I'm going to give you 5 steps to make sure that this doesn't happen to you. But first, please do me a favor and subscribe to this channel. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it. Leave a comment below. I would really appreciate it. So the first reason why students ignore directions is because the teacher talks over them. In other words, the students are talking themselves with each other, looking around the room, and the teacher begins giving directions. Now, even if it's just a couple or a few students talking, it will grow as time goes on. Each time you give directions, you can never, ever do this. It's a big mistake. Second reason is that the teacher talks too much. So they over-explain. The more words you use, the less power you have in your message. Most teachers could do really well by cutting at least a third, and in most cases, a half of the amount of talking they do per day. Every extra word you use, the less power that message comes across. Okay, next is that they talk too loud. And this often happens as the teacher begins to it dawns on them that the students aren't following directions, or that the students are ignoring the directions they're giving, they're not listening, and so the teacher raises their voice level. The problem with this is that you're training your students to tune you out the louder you speak. You only want to speak loud enough so the person in the back of the room can hear you, and no more than that. Because again, the louder you talk, you're sending the message that you only mean it when you raise your voice. Also, when you raise your voice and you talk loudly, the students don't need to look at you. And so they start looking around the room, and so they're missing out on a big part of your communication. They're missing out on your facial expressions and your tone and your body language. And so you want to keep your voice at a lower level. Okay, next. You narrate. You repeat yourself, and you remind. All these things come post directions, but they all make it much harder for students to listen, because when you do these things, they don't need to listen to your initial directions. They learn that they can daydream or whatever. There's no onus on them to listen, because you're going to narrate, repeat yourself, and remind them through directions. And over time, their listening gets worse and worse, and their ability to follow directions also goes down. Next reason is because you've lost control of your class. You've lost control of your class. Now I'm going to put a star next to this one, because nothing you do when you lose control of your class will help your students stop ignoring your directions. There's no way to fix it. So this is a sign if this happens. And by the way, if you can't get your students' attention, then that is a big sign, the sign that you've lost control. And in this case, you have to start over again from scratch. Over at Smart Classroom Management, I've written tons of articles on this very topic, how to start over. Also, it will be the topic of a future video, but just know that if you've lost control, there are no strategies that are going to work for you. You have to start over teaching your classroom management plan again from the beginning. Okay, so the 5 steps that will fix all of this stuff and start training your students every single day to be better listeners and relentless followers of your direction. The first thing is, of course, you don't start speaking until you have silence. If you can't get silence, then you've lost control. So you have to wait for your students to be silent. They're looking at you because this is a habit they develop by doing these things. They'll begin looking at you, especially if you're not talking too much or talking over students, but you wait for silence. Next thing, number 2, is when you do give directions, you're brief and extremely direct. You're going to say, do this. Now, before you can begin giving directions, it's important that you've visualized exactly what you want your students to do. Like, what is the optimum way you want them to pick up the science materials that you have on the back table? How do you want them to get in line and pick those up before going back to their seats? So you have to visualize and know what you want, and that will enable you to be really direct. Now, during this time, you can model, of course, depending on the age of your students, you can model how to do that. But you want to be, again, direct, brief, fewer words, the better. Also, it's important to mention that you're only saying it once. You're only giving directions once. Do not say them over and over again. This is where modeling can come in, so they have kind of 2 ways of seeing you. But the reason why you're saying it once is because you're training them to listen for the first time, and they get really, really good at this. And again, it doesn't matter, I've mentioned this before, it doesn't matter where you teach. It doesn't matter if you teach at a Title I school. I've spent 30 years in only tough Title I schools. Everything we do at Smart Classroom Management is for all, no matter where you work or grade level, K through 12. Okay, next thing is you're going to check. You're going to check. Now, if we're talking about directions, so asking students to do things. So this is usually part of the routines of your classroom and the transitions you're doing. So we're not necessarily, though this can be helpful, we're not talking about directions as in doing independent work so much. Okay, so this can be helpful in that way, but that's a topic for another day to prepare students to do their actual work. But this check is in, we want to shift responsibility to their shoulders by saying, is there anyone who doesn't know exactly what to do? And this is an important question because you are shifting the onus, you're shifting the burden onto their shoulders, you're pausing and you're waiting, and you're sending the message that this expectation is that you know what to do, and it's on you. More responsibility on your students' shoulders, the more weight, the more purpose, the more burden, the better they do. The better they do. In this day and age, we're removing a lot of that responsibility. This is a way to place it on them. So always check in that regard. Because you're giving simple directions, there isn't a reason to do an extensive checking for understanding. That really only comes when you're doing preparing students to do their academic work. In this case, we want them to be able to listen and translate into what you want them to do, or watch as you model and translate into what you want them to do. So this is all this is training them to be really good listeners and to never ignore your directions. The next thing is, after checking, you want to always use go language. So after you say, is there anyone who doesn't know what to do? And you pause, you merely say go. And go, students, that word gets them moving. And so you always want to say go, because you're telling them, this is what I want you to do. Fulfill this objective that I've given you. Okay? After you've given the go signal, you don't talk at all. You say nothing. No narrating, no repeating, no reminding, no using your arms to show kids what to do. It's all over. The more you do that, the more you weaken their listening and following your directions. The more likely they're going to ignore them. They're going to walk around helpless, not knowing what to do on the simplest things, because they've tuned you out because of all of this stuff. You've trained them to tune you out. If you do this, you're training the opposite. Okay? So no talking, and your attitude is always, show me. Prove it to me. Show me what you got. And your job is to observe and watch carefully and to ensure that it is done correctly. Last step is that you offer feedback. Feedback. Yes, it can come in the form of praise, modest praise. That's good. That's how you do it. You can also thank them. Once this becomes, or if this becomes an actual routine, then you won't praise them, but you can continue to give feedback. I like how you walked through was correct. However, I noticed 2 students who grabbed the papers instead of grabbing the tape that was needed for the art project or whatever. Make sure you follow directions specifically the same way every time. And you are looking for excellence. You're raising the bar on everything, even these simple directions, because they transfer to the academic part of it. They transfer to everything you do. You're training them to listen to everything that you say. And my promise to you is, if you follow this approach every single time you give directions, standing in the same place every time you give them, you're going to see phenomenal success, and the ignoring will go away. Now, I want to leave you with the last thing is, in the beginning of the school year, you want success. When I'm teaching, all I want is success. I want to go from one success to the next success to the next success all day long. I'm not accepting anything less than that. Now, that doesn't mean your classroom is going to look like an army barracks or anything like that. It's not that in the least. You can still have fun and should have fun with your class, have great activities and all those sorts of things. But because we're going from one success to the next, the very beginning of the year, it's critical that they experience doing things the right way. So you want to start off very simple as they need. Some of these students, maybe they're in 8th grade and they've never really done this before. They've never really been asked to do things the right way and listen for the first time. And so you want to begin with something really simple. Meet them wherever they are. Make sure you're successful. And then you add complexity as the year goes on. I add complexity for complexity's sake. So I'll add challenges to the directions I give. just to test them out and watch them. And they know this. They know it's a challenge, and so they'll like listen in. And I'll have maybe on a piece of tape on the I'll put a piece of tape on the floor, and part of the direction is they have to stop on the tape and say a vocabulary word or whatever it is. And so you add complexity, and over time they get really, really good at following your directions. Again, doesn't matter where you teach. It works everywhere if you're dedicated to it and you have good control of your classroom through our approach at Smart Classroom Management. You're going to see incredible success. Hope that helps. Hope you're having a great week. See you next time.